I can tell you about the coming out party of the Inglewood Crips when they first announced that they were Crips. And that was at Tom Cross record hop they had in Inglewood at Darby Park. And I believe it had to be that summer of '71 when I got back from Chicago, and that was the first and the last Tom Cross record hop that they had in Inglewood. I don't know if that was the last for the whole city, but me and a good friend of mine, James, we were standing out in front of the park, and Philip McCain, Kenny Robinson, and Big Nose Perry. I can't remember who else was with them, but they came up and see, we all knew each other. So, we just kind of hanging out. And all of a sudden, they started putting their earrings in. So I didn't know what that meant. I didn't even know what it meant. So I'm like, what's going on, So, they was just like, putting their gear on. And before you know it, man, I looked, and it was a whole slew of Crips coming into the park. And I'm talking about, a lot of guys with t-shirts, white t-shirts, and canes and ace deuces on. And so it was a real big fight that day, a real big fight inside. And I'm talking about people getting hit with pool sticks. That day, Karate Man got into a fight with one of the guys from Inglewood named George Washington. And that would only be the beginning of their feud that they had going on, because both of them was pretty good in martial arts. And that was something that kind of led to George eventually getting, saying the hell with it. And he ended up joining the service after he graduated high school. But that was the Inglewood Crips coming out party that night.
What was it about Darby Park that made that your number one hangout spot?
Well, actually, it was in the middle, kind of in the middle of Inglewood. It was right, a few blocks off Crenshaw. It was, right behind that was Hollywood Park Racetrack. If you went down to the next street, which was 92nd, and you went down, you would be right there by the Forum. So that was kind of like in the middle of the city.
And how far did these Inglewood Crips stay from there?
They were kind of scattered out. It really wasn't that many. I mean, from the beginning, it wasn't that many of them. Okay. So I think the numbers didn't increase to about maybe 74, 75 when those younger generations started coming in from Monroe that had adopted that philosophy. And they, but prior to that, they were coming in, they were more or less thinking along the chain gang family route.
When did you first hear of Watergate Crips?
Oh man, Watergate Crips. I heard about them after Kenny Robinson and Michael Christian got kicked out of Morningside. And they end up going to Hutnell, and then they eventually got continuation, and they got kicked out of that. Well, they got chased out of that. Some cats tried to shoot at them. And they ended up checking into Dorsey, and that's when I started hearing about them. So they had to be about maybe around 73. Okay. Around 73.
How about IVC?
Yeah, the IVCs, they kicked in around, I'm going to say around 72, 73. Okay. Yeah, because those guys, they, originally those guys were part, considered chain gang on that side.
The IVCs was?
Yeah, because see, the chain gang went from, our territory was from 120th all the way to Florence, then from Van Ness all the way over to La Brea. So we had all that. That was all our territory. And so the the guys, the way the IBC started, and I don't want to say it's my fault, but I'll say this. One day, Raymond Washington came up to Morningside, and, you know, it was the end of lunch, and everybody's going back to class, and I saw the cat. I didn't know who he was. You know, I didn't know who he was. And so, you know, I'm walking toward the classroom, and you know, so we kind of like face to face. And so we just started talking. You know, so he said, well, hey, man, who's holding down? And I didn't know what that term meant. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, well, who got the biggest arms? I said, oh, okay, well, it's cat, you know, go over in the weight room. You know, that's all I knew. I didn't even know who he was. And matter of fact, I had complimented him on his hat that he had, you know. And he seemed, you know, I didn't have no problem with him. Like I said, I didn't know who he was. But that was after he had got out of jail. And the word on the street was a lot of people were saying that he should have been a lot bigger. And I guess they was expecting him to be as big as Tookie when he got out of jail, but he wasn't. And, you know, he had good size on him, but he wasn't, you know, he wasn't that big. Because it was a few other guys that was a lot bigger, like Mouse was bigger, cat named Warlock that was from the west side, he was bigger. Actually, Michael Christian was bigger.
So when you say Mouse, you're talking about Magnificent Seven Mouse?
Yeah, I'm talking about Mouse, man. From I guess you would consider him a Trey back in the day. He was, you know, one of the West Side Crips that I eventually met years later after the nonsense was, you know, had kind of died down. And you know, I got a chance to meet him, man. We had a pretty good conversation. He wasn't, you know, like I thought he would have been. You know how you get that misconception about people,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't really know a person until you actually talk to them.
Mm-hmm. Did you know his brothers, Rusty and Cutes?
Yes, I did. I had met them through this chick that I was dating.
Does the name Terry Godot ring a bell?
No.